Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be rating and reviewing all the books that I read in 2024. I read 47 total books, which is the most I've ever read in 1 year. And so I thought it'd be just kind of fun to rapid fire go through all of them and give you all my thoughts. I'm going to try and do this really quickly because we got a lot to go through, but let's get started. So the first book that I started the year with was ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses. This was my first fantasy book that I've read since childhood, so it was good. I definitely think it was a really good first book. I gave it 4 stars. Still wasn't when I first read this, I wasn't sure if fantasy was really for me, but I think this was a good starter book for the series, so did enjoy this one. The next book I read was In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle, and I gave them 5 stars at the time, but looking back, I'd probably drop it to a 4, maybe 4.5, just because it was a really cool concept. I loved the whole idea of the book, but there was a pretty major plot point, I guess, towards the end that kind of low-key ruined it for me. I just thought it was so unnecessary. It just really rubbed me the wrong way. So yeah, I really like the concept of the book, but that one detail really was enough to drop it almost a whole star in hindsight. So the next book I read was Cat Among the Pigeons by Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie is one of my all-time favorite authors. I love her her murder mysteries are just the classics, and this one was actually one of my favorites I've read from her. I give it 5 stars. This one takes place at an all-girls boarding school, and all the students are pretty well connected to important people in the world, and so it was really interesting. I really recommend if you want a cozy mystery. The next book I read was Flawless by Elsie Silvers. This was I love this book. I know some people think that the first one's not as good, but I gave this one 5 stars and I still stand by it. I really think it's so fun. It kind of reminded me of the movie The Last Ride or The Longest Ride, the Nicholas Sparks one. Super fun, super good, and highly recommend. One of my top romance books from the year. The next book I read was Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. This is what everyone says it is. It is so good. If you are a girl in your 20s, I highly recommend you read it at some point. This follows the author. It's a memoir that follows the author through all of her 20s and kind of all the lessons she learns, all the different relationships she has, not just romantic relationships, but friendships, family. I feel there's something in here that everyone will connect to. The first half wasn't my favorite, but the second half I was in tears. I really connected to it. So I think there's something in here for everyone, and I highly recommend every girl in their 20s read this for sure. The next book I read was Normal People by Sally Rooney. This one I gave 3 stars. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I know this book is very controversial. I think there's a lot of really there's a lot of beauty in this book. It's very raw, it's real, but some things did kind of throw me off and just kind of got a little boring. It's very character focused. The ending was kind of anticlimactic, so yeah, I would read it just because it's such a popular book. I think you should read it if you're curious what you would think on it. The next book I read was One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and she is again my favorite all-time author. I love her books. This was one of the first books I've read from her earlier romances, and this was 5 stars. This was so good. This is about a woman who is married to her high school sweetheart, and he ends up getting into basically a plane crash and is presumed dead. So she goes through the whole grieving process and eventually falls in love again and is engaged, and then all of a sudden, by the way, this is no spoilers, this is all this is all in the back of the book, but anyways, she gets engaged, and all of a sudden her previous husband comes back alive, and she basically has to figure out who is she going to spend her life, you know, like who is she going to pick? And I was so stressed the whole time. I feel like there were a lot of parts that like were so relatable too. Somehow like the feelings she was feeling, I don't know how I felt like I like related to her, which is so odd because it's not really a relatable plot in the slightest, but it was beautiful, wonderful. I love her books. It was amazing. The next book I read, sorry, I have my Goodreads pulled up on my laptop just to reference. But the next book I read was, oh my goodness, Aquarium Mist and Fury. This I gave 4.5 just because it took me most of the book to like get into it. I gave it 4.5 stars. Chapter 54, I believe, was the most insane chapter I have ever read. It was so beautiful. Like the build up to it is insane. So I understand the hype. From that point on, I was like fully invested. So it was a really good book, but like I said, it just took me a while to really like get into it and connect with it. So that's why it wasn't a 5-star, but super good book. I loved it. Next book I read was Never Lie by Frida McFadden. This is the first Frida McFadden book I've read, and I loved it. I gave it a 5 stars. You'll notice I'm slightly generous with my 5 stars, but this one I do still stand by this. I think it's really unique and great for the winter time. If you're looking for a little thriller that's like winter themed, super good. I read more Frida McFadden books throughout the year, and so far this one has been my favorite, but we'll see as that goes on. Next book I read was Neighbor Favor by Christina Forrest, and this was really cute. I gave it 4 star. It's so cute. I really like that the characters, they're both kind of like shy and introverted, and I feel like that's kind of unique. I feel like there's not many romance stories where both the characters are like that, and so it was super just like sweet and wholesome, and them just kind of figuring out their own kind of like self-limiting beliefs and their past like issues with relationships, and it was very like wholesome kind of book. I really liked it. Then probably my favorite book of the entire year was Caraval by Stephanie Garber. This book is like my Roman Empire of the year. This was 5 stars. I only read this because I want to read the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, and I wanted to read the series first, but I kind of thought it'd be like a book / series I just would have to like just get through, but this was so surprising. This is very much like an Alice in Wonderland kind of vibe to me. I think it was so magical, whimsical. I highly recommend it. I've not read Once Upon a Broken Heart yet, but if that is so much better than this, then I cannot wait, because this was so good. My favorite book of the year. And then after Caraval, I went straight into Legendary, and again, this one I gave another 5 stars. I'm definitely more of a Scarlet girl, but I love that the plot introduced and the magic system that was introduced in the second book, because it's kind of like almost a tarot card inspired magic system, which I love tarot cards and I love that kind of stuff, so I thought it was super fun. So again, that one was like another 5 star for me, and such a fun, very vivid imagery, super fun book. Then I read Eat, Pray, Love, and I give it 5 stars at the time. I'd probably drop it a little bit. This is kind of basically like a travel journal, is kind of how it read. Very spiritual, so I did like it. There's some really great quotes, really great messages in here, and very entertaining. So if you've been wanting to read it, I say give it a try. Like I said, kind of just reads like a travel journal, and you're just kind of reading her own personal growth journey. This is great if you are going through a breakup or an identity crisis. This would be a good book for you. I think it'd be inspiring. And after all the healing that we've done with that book, I read Magnolia Parks by Jessica Hastings, and I knew what I was getting into like when I started this book, but that really didn't make it better. I gave this book 3 stars. It just felt so, like, the plot was very much, like, going in circles. I didn't really connect with the characters much, and the constant clothing descriptions, like, were just kind of, like, my last straw with this book. I haven't continued the series, but for some reason recently I've had, like, an urge to continue and try Daisy Hates, because I know some people don't like the Magnolia books, but they love the Daisy Hates books, and I've heard it gets better as it goes on, so I might continue the series, but so far I have not, because this just was not it for me. This one just wasn't it for me. Then I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and this was so cute. I love the magical realism in this book. I thought it was very fun. I gave it a 5 stars. I think this is a really, like, great romance. There are some deeper themes kind of relating to, like, grief, but I think it was so beautifully done, and I did cry at one point. I thought it was so sweet now that I think about it. Makes me want to tear up, because there was a really beautiful scene in here. I'd say this was, like, my favorite of all time, but this is a super solid romance. I would highly recommend. Then I read The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, and this one I gave 4 stars. Really fun, cozy, very witty, and, like, humorous. This is a murder mystery that takes place kind of in, like, a retirement village, and you've got this Thursday murder club of these 4 residents, and they basically are just trying to solve this murder together. And this was really funny. Like, there were a lot of, like, very witty like one-liners in here, so this was a really fun one if you're looking for just a cozy, funny mystery. The next book I read was A Court of Wings and Ruin. This is the 3rd book in the ACOTAR series, and this I did give 5 stars. I was connected the whole time. I was really worried about this one because, not to, like, be too much of a spoiler, but this one's a lot more, like, violent battles, that kind of thing, and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like this, but I was so connected to all the characters in this that I was, like, just so invested in it. So this was a full 5 stars. It's such a big book, but it was so good. Then after that, we got our hands on Finale by Stephanie Garber, the third book in the Caraval series, and this one was slightly disappointing compared to the first 2. I get 4 stars. For reference, the first book follows Scarlet, the second book follows her sister Donatella, and the third book, it's dual POV with both of them. And I thought I would like that, but it kind of made the plot really confusing because they are on 2 different, like, journeys, and there was just so many moving parts, so many things happening. I felt like we kept kind of losing, like, the driving plot. Like, I feel like we'd get to a scene or get to a point of view, I guess, and I'd be like, well, why are we here again? Like, how is this relating to, like, the end goal, like, our overall mission? It just felt very, like, I'd get kind of lost. So I gave it 4 stars. It's still very whimsical and fun, but I feel like the plot was just not as cohesive. So I gave it 4 stars. But overall, love the series, but the third final book wasn't my favorite. Then I continued with the Chestnut Spring series. I read Heartless by Elsie Silvers, and this was a 5 stars. This is so cute. These books are just so, like, comforting, like, just very sweet, kind of lighthearted books, and this one was so fun. I almost like this one just as much as the first one though, but this one, again, just a cute, comforting kind of read, so I really liked it. Then I read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, and I give this 4 stars. This one didn't, like, really hit that much for me. I kind of predicted the ending, and I don't know, I feel like this trope is just a little bit overdone. It just doesn't do it for me, so I give it 4 stars. Still really good thriller, and I'm excited to see the movie that they're gonna be making soon for it, but I like Never Lie better than this one. So next book we read was Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. I give it 4 stars, but I do have opinions. I really liked the book all the way up until the end, because that ending I had some issues with. I feel like it was kind of glossed over. I feel like it was kind of like an easy out, because the whole book it's a second chance romance, and you're trying to, the whole book is kind of like, you know, something really bad happened in the past, and so it's kind of hard because it has to be bad enough for them to like have this major breakup, but not so bad where you can't forgive him. So I feel like the way that they kind of twisted it made it where it's like, okay, well, if we're gonna say it's this, like, you're kind of opening a whole new can of worms. That's kind of how I felt about it. So the ending, I still cried, it was still cute, but the ending, I was like, it felt like it was just kind of an easy out to make it like forgivable, when it's like, okay, well, we're just gonna like, it just got glossed over way too quick in my opinion. So that was my only like gripe with the book, but otherwise I did really like it. I felt like I kind of relate to the characters. So super cute. Not a 5-star though, but it was still cute. Then after that, I read None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I gave 5 stars. I don't think about it too often though now, so I would probably drop it down a little bit, but it was good. It's not super like scary. It's kind of more of like a mystery really, but it was really just like creepy and eerie. So I would recommend. The ending wasn't super shocking either, but it was still a very like creepy story throughout, very like suspenseful, I would say. Then I read Good Girl Bad Blood, which is the second book in a Good Girls Guide to Murder series. I love this one. I get 5 stars. I liked it more than the first one. This is a YA like true crime kind of book, and I thought it was a really great story. I was actually like very invested the whole time. Super just like fun, kind of like mystery. So highly recommend the series. Then I read another top book of the year, that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This book, I want to reread it and annotate it maybe this year, because there are so many like beautiful quotes in this. So many times when I felt like the author was like speaking to me. The characters aren't necessarily like relatable to me, but their feelings and the way everything's written, it feels so personal and relatable. So I love this one. I really want to reread it. This is like one of my all-time favorite romances, and I'm a huge fan of Emily Henry. Thanks to this book. Then I read One Italian Summer by Rebecca Surley, and this one was not it. I gave it like 2 stars. I liked the ambiance, I liked the atmosphere. It takes place in Italy, so it was like a fun setting, and I did like that it was kind of like mother-daughter focused. I thought that was really sweet, but I felt like the main character was so insufferable. Like, so many of their like flashbacks were just unrelatable, kind of out of touch, and there's like not a trope I would say, but there's kind of a trope that was in this book that was also in 5 Year book, which is, and that I did not like. I felt like it was so necessary. I felt like it just made me angry. Like, I just don't think it needed to be in there, and if it wasn't in there, the book would have been at least a little better. But this was not it. One of my least favorite books, actually. The next book I read was Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is a very controversial book. I liked it. I give it 4 stars. I will say this is not like an original plot. Just kind of like a lot of tropes thrown in all together that don't really make a lot of sense together. There's like trials in this book, and I feel like the whole trial thing in fantasy books are just a little overdone for me. They're not my favorite, but also I feel like it just, in this particular world, it just didn't make a lot of sense. So I feel like I haven't read the Red Queen series, which is another book that like people compare this to, but it just felt very like just so unoriginal, which kind of like it's a fun read. The next book I read was Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. I really like this one. It's not, I feel like if you love the cowboy romance books, you should try this series. It's nothing that deep. It's very short and sweet, like lighthearted, pretty like fast-paced, but it's a fun vibe. Keep that in mind if you are looking to start this series. It's nothing too deep. It's just fun cowboy romance. Then I read The Hotel Nantucket by Ellen Hildebrand. This was my first Ellen Hildebrand book, and I definitely found it entertaining. I would give it like a 3.5 to 4. It was really fun, lots of drama. I loved how there's so many characters, so many moving parts, and then at the end, everything just wraps up and connects, and it was really good. I would probably read more of her books. Not my like, absolute favorite book for sure, but it was like I did care about like how I did kind of care about how everything was gonna wrap up and end. So I liked it. Then I read The Silent Patient, and this one I think is a super solid psychological thriller. Super just eerie. Not like super scary or anything, but just very like suspenseful, eerie, like just solid thriller. I think you should read. If you're a big thriller fan, definitely read this one. It's also a really great intro into thrillers if you haven't read many, because I feel like after reading a few thrillers, this was a slightly predictable, but I think it would be a really fun one if you're kind of new to reading or new to thrillers. The next book I read was Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This series, I read Icebreaker the year 2023, and it was good. This one was better. I would give this like a 3.5 probably. I feel like this one definitely had more like plot to it. It was still pretty like lusty. However, these books you kind of always lose the plot in my opinion. Like midway, it's just like, what is actually the point of this? But like, what is the actual like point? Good books. I wouldn't necessarily recommend these, honestly. They are cute, and I really like the setting of this one. This place takes place, it's like a summer camp. But yeah, not my favorite books. Definitely have some issues, but can be a fun read if you're into that. Then I read Carrie Soto Is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I should have loved this book because I love Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I am a tennis girly, but it just wasn't my favorite. The main character, Carrie Soto, is kind of this like unlikable character, which obviously you know that, and that's kind of the point. But there were a lot of times when I just like could not really agree with all the actions of the main character. I still think it was a really empowering book and entertaining, but not my favorite one from this author. Then I read Ward D by Frida McFadden. This one was a no. I gave it like 3 stars. It wasn't bad. It was entertaining, but it was so just ridiculous. Like the things that happened in this book were just like so random. Everything I just connected like too conveniently. So I gave it 3 stars. Not my favorite, but it was entertaining. I'll give it that. The next book I read was Happy Place by Emily Henry. I again really loved this one. I didn't like it as much as Beach Read, but this was still like a really good book. I would say the characters like thinking about it now, some of the characters were just like a little annoying, but I did love the idea of like the whole friend group. There's a pretty big like miscommunication trope in this, so keep that in mind if you're interested in reading it. I didn't hate it. It was probably a little like, it was definitely unnecessary, but I didn't hate it. Good one for your 20s. This is very much like, there were a lot of like issues that the characters face that I felt like I could relate to. So again, really good one. I need to read all of Emily Henry. Then I read Gone Girl, and this one was kind of just on a whim. I gave it 4 stars. It was just really entertaining. I really wanted to know how everything wrapped up. It kind of dragged a little bit at the end, but I was just so like curious how everything was gonna end. Then I read The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This was beautiful. This made me cry. This made me sick to my stomach. It's really, really good. Super, super heavy and dark. I'm not one to read books that I know are just like heartbreaking, but this is like really good. This is like a very important story, I feel like, and I love the perspective of just like, again, focused on the women during World War II and like how it like really just impacts the civilians. So beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story. Incredibly heartbreaking, but I'd probably consider this a must read. Then I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. This one I gave 3 stars. It's cute. It's fun for fall, but it's not that good. It's very, very quick, like insta-lovey. It's fun if you're looking for like just a lighthearted fall read. Then I read The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This one was a weird one for me because it's very dense. Like, it's very long, kind of on the slower side, but it reads very like intellectually. As much as it was like kind of slower paced, I was like very interested in like what was going to happen. So I would give this more like a 3.5, but this was a fun one. Very good for like fall and winter if you've been wanting to read it. Then I read The Only One Left by Riley Sager. I love Riley Sager books, at least the ones I've read. This one I gave 5 stars. This is really more of like a whodunit, but like super eerie and like spooky. But it's really good. I feel like it's very like kind of gothic feeling. The ambiance is super just like eerie. I really, really loved it. Really fun, kind of just really like fun mystery. So would recommend for sure. Then I read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, and I did not love this one as much as I thought I would. It was still good, but there were just some parts that I felt like would just kind of throw me off for some reason. I don't really know what it is. It could have been the wrong time, just the wrong time, but I didn't love this one as much as I thought it would, sadly. Still good. I would still recommend. I think it's not a bad book. It just wasn't really for me somehow. Then I read another Riley Sager. I read Home Before Dark. This is a great one for like spooky season. This is very much like haunted house. It's kind of inspired by the Amityville horror story. I wouldn't say it's terrifying or super scary, but I still think it was a really fun one. Really great for like Halloween in October. Then I read Powerless by Elsie Silvers. I read this at like the perfect time though, because this kind of takes place in like the mountains, kind of like a road trip, and I read this on a road trip to the mountains, and it was actually like perfect time for me to read it. This is not as good as the first 2, but it wasn't bad. I just feel like Jasper, our main character, was just a little like, he's pretty quiet, which isn't bad. It's not a bad thing, but it really led to a lot of like unnecessary miscommunications, I feel like, but definitely still a really good one. Just not my favorite compared to the other 2. Then I read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and this was really good. 5 stars. I think it was really beautifully written. I was very invested in these characters, and the romance is so wholesome. Still very YA, I would say, but still very entertaining, very wholesome. So I liked it. Then I read One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I was so excited for this one, and it was really good. It's not super action-packed, but the ambiance of it is so good. It's perfect for like a cold day, fall, winter. The romance was like, I liked the romance when the romance, my thing. I like the romance because it was almost more of a subplot. Like, it was very like they're breadcrumbing you. I felt like so I really liked it. I love the magic system. It's kind of, again, like a tarot card inspired magic system and very like eerie vibes. I need to read the second one soon. Then I read Murder at an Irish Christmas by Carleen O'Connor. This was just a really fun Christmas murder mystery. I thought it was just like the perfect amount of Christmas vibes to get you in the season, but still also really like well thought out cozy murder mystery. So this was a good one. I gave it 5 stars. Then I read The Wedding Witch by Erin Sterling. This is the 3rd book in the X-Hex series, which I read in 2023, and I loved the first 2. This one wasn't as good. It's a little shorter, as you can see, so it just felt very quick and fast paced, and it was very insta loving in the way of like insta like you're the love of my life. Still very fun. If you like the first 2, I would say read it. But I gave this like a 4 stars, so not my favorite, but if you like the first 2, still a fun one for the Christmas season. Then I read Spectacular, which is the Christmas holiday novella that just came out for the Caraval series, and this one was actually kind of disappointing, which is so sad. I love the drawings and the illustrations. Like, they were so fun, so beautiful, but the plot was just like not my favorite, kind of boring. And there was also like a scene that felt very like uncomfortable and almost concerning, so I gave it 3 stars. Not that great. I would say if you love the Caraval series, read it. It's pretty short, like it's super short, honestly, but not really, but it was a little disappointing. So, and then the last book I read of the year was A Midwinter Murder by Verity Bright. And again, this one wasn't my favorite. This was another just like cozy murder mystery, but I felt like it was very like, I felt like we kind of lost the plot at times. I wasn't super connected to it. I felt like there were a lot of scenes that were unnecessary. I just didn't vibe with it as much. But that was the last book I read. Those are all the books that I read this year. I'm excited to read so many more books this year, and I hope to continue making some videos with like book content. So if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching, and I will hopefully see you soon.